Hi.
Hello, Internet.
Hi, Internet. How are you? I see people in comments already. Super exciting.
Amazing. Welcome.
Amazing.
Welcome today. What is this? Day 4 of Small Things Con?
Yes,
Yeah,
I had
welcome.
to think about it.
Yeah, welcome to everyone. Today is a super exciting Small Things Con event. It is a crossing of Granger 2020, which is the campaign that we have been running that looked very different before the start of, the pandemic. And Small Things Con, which is our virtual conference that many of you who are watching us here tonight are a part of and have been coming to all our different workshops, and we're super excited about that. So I'm a little all over the place because I'm just coming off of a very exciting toddler bedtime. Still getting it together, but I do want to take some time to introduce everybody on the call because there are a number of new faces here, which folks in the audience may not have met before. And so I want to ask folks to do what's hopefully a fun introduction, which is just what is your name? Where are you coming from like where do you work, what do you do there, and then tell us your Hogwarts house if you have read the series, and also what is the best thing that you have eaten while you have been social distancing. So name, job, Hogwarts house, something delicious you have eaten recently, which we know y'all ate at your house because it's the only place we go now. Delicious you have eaten recently.
I'll go first and give our guests some time to think.
I could go too. I'm the one who.
Do you want to go?
No, I'm the one who.
Do you want to go? Somebody's got the video playing also. The echo effect. Does someone have the video playing in a tab? Yeah, there we go. Okay. That's what we call the mirroring effect. It's the forever magic mirror of the live stream. And you all might want to mute in the background actually, because I'm getting a little bit of echo while you're not talking. Sorry, technical nargles. We very rarely have this many people on a stream, which is like exciting. I didn't know at first if StreamYard would let us do this many like Brady Bunch squares. It's been, I'm very thrilled that they will. Yes, and thank you, chat, for reminding us pronouns. So hi, if you don't know me, my name is Janae. I work for Harry Potter Alliance, managing our programs, campaigns, all the things. My pronouns are she, her, and what's my other thing? I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I think that's maybe part of our intro.
Where do you work?
Oh, well, I work at the HPA, so that was, I had to add something else. I'm a Hufflepuff, and I think the best thing I've eaten, the other night we got really ambitious and made like fry bread, which is it's kind of like a tostada-ish sort of thing, but more like fluffy. If you're not familiar with more Southwestern foods, but that was really delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm into it. I'll do myself next so everyone has time to think. But I am Katie, she, her, and I am the director at the HPA. And I am a Ravenclaw. And the best thing I ate, we made some tacos that were made of just like, oh no, we are running out of produce in the house. Like, what can we what can we throw together? And they were amazing. They were so good. I don't know if it was just desperation, but they tasted fantastic. So they were lovely. Yeah, would any one of our guests like to go? How about Sarah?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. Hi, guys. I'm Sarah. Sarah Armstrong. I work at Protect Democracy. she, her. I'm a Ravenclaw. And the best thing I've eaten while social distancing is actually a recipe that I make quite often, but it's one of my favorite things to make. It's Brussels sprouts and carrots that are like soaked in balsamic and maple syrup, and then you roast it. Oh yeah, and you throw a little cayenne pepper.
I would like the recipe after this.
It's a recipe.
That's so good.
Amazing. And we have another friend from Protect Democracy, Genevieve.
Hi, everyone. I'm Genevieve Nadeau. I'm a counsel, so an attorney with Protect Democracy. She, her. I'm coming from Boston. Let's see, what did I eat? So I was lucky in that I have a niece who's a brownie. So I ordered a bunch of Girl Scouts not long before this happened. So I've been eating some good Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, amazing.
Nice.
We went through our stash too fast, and I have been so sad about it.
Awesome. And last but not least, a wonderful friend from ACLU.
Yes. Hi, my name is Molly McGrath. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a campaign strategist at ACLU. So I do a lot of work advancing and protecting the right to vote. And I have eaten nothing that exciting, definitely Girl Scout cookies that did not last me the allotted time that I bought them for. And a lot of pasta too. Nothing excited, like soaked and blanched Brussels sprouts, but now I'm inspired.
Yeah, I think those tacos tasted so good because my diet has also been Girl Scout cookies and pasta.
Yeah.
It felt really like very fresh.
Exactly. Even there are other choices. Yeah, that's what looks the best.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, we have somebody from Somerville. That is the home of the HPA is in Somerville, Massachusetts. That's where we were founded.
Oh, wow.
The home of the HPA right now is in everyone's home. Congratulations, you're all a part of it. So we are super excited to talk to you all because we have been working on this campaign, Granger 2020. Protect Democracy is a partner, ACLU is a partner, and it is super exciting. Hermione Granger's running for president. Oh God, do we need her more than ever? And the real thing about it, because we get people who are very concerned that we're really trying to elect a fictional teenage British witch to the White House. And we want to be clear that that's not what we're trying to do. What we're really trying to do is use it as a vehicle for getting people excited about engaging with this issue of like keeping democracy strong or trying to make it, stronger and better able to maintain our institutions, and getting people excited about turning folks out to vote and keeping voting accessible, making it more accessible to more people. Y'all are the experts on that, so we are super excited to talk more about it and learn from you. So we have some questions we're going to ask before we dive in. I do want to highlight to everybody, Granger 2020 and Small Things Con is brought to you by the HPA, and everything we do is free. We're providing daily free fan entertainment and actions all throughout the next, future. We'll see how long this goes. Yeah, but we are a nonprofit. We are always fundraising. We are especially fundraising hard right now because a big part of the HPA's spring and summer budget depends on events. And I don't know if y'all heard, but an awful lot of events have gotten canceled recently. So we are encouraging people, if you are excited about the programming that we have been providing, you're excited about the actions that we're doing, you can go to bit.ly/support Granger 2020. It's a fundraiser we're running right now. Every donation makes a huge, huge difference in our ability to keep doing really awesome, important programming like this. So there's my fundraiser plug. Let's talk about voting. Let's see. Should I keep talking, or Janae, do you want to talk?
Sure, I can talk.
All right, Janae will talk now.
Equal opportunity here. So I think, we have been working to rally fans to take action around the election, turn out voters, make sure people have access to vote. But like everybody else, we were not planning on being part of a global pandemic. So we're curious to talk to you all about, how things have been shifting, what folks can be aware of. So I think our first question is just kind of that, like, how have you seen things shifting in response to COVID-19 from each of your kind of perspectives as organizations that are really deep into this work?
I'm happy to start. Want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
So, a lot is changing, and a lot is changing really fast. We're still in the primary election season, and we're already seeing a lot of those that haven't happened already be postponed. Mm-hmm. And you're sort of seeing people in a lot of states in real time just trying to figure out what's going on, and can they safely hold elections? If not, are they allowed to postpone them? How do you do that? When will it be safe? So there's a lot of stuff happening like all at once. And at the same time, a lot of people thinking like, we don't know how long this is going to last. Is this going to affect the general election in the fall? And so we're seeing a lot of people very quickly trying to figure that out. Protect Democracy is one of the organizations doing that. And we actually just issued some guidance on this today. I'll put a little plug in for that. We've been working since last year with a national task force of about 40 or so experts in election law, in election administration, in public health, former government officials, of both political parties. It's a cross-partisan group to kind of prepare for election crises, things that might go wrong and threaten a free and fair election. We didn't know this was going to be the thing. But so because we had this really great expert group, we quickly put together some guidance on how state and local officials can start preparing for the 2020 general election if things are still bad. And so you can find that at electiontaskforce.org. Just coincidentally, we launched it today. So really psyched to be able to tell everyone here about it. But there's a lot going on in states and counties, at the federal government, a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that certainly this is something that has, disrupted and quickly disrupted the primary season. And I know that it's hard for all of us to even, in this moment, think about anything besides, everybody's health. And it's such an important and challenging moment, and very, nobody should have to choose between their health and casting a ballot. And this is a very serious and unique landscape. And so, looking both kind of at the issues happening right now, that we saw last week with Ohio moving their election, and with states adapting to what is, this new normal that we're all adapting to in the middle of a primary cycle. And then also, in the second lane, looking at November. And, what we know now is that, that we have time to make sure that everybody, we have time and methods to make sure that everybody can vote by mail and can have access to the ballot. And that election, under no circumstances then, will need to go through the rapid response that we're experiencing now in states.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Sorry, I'm just hearing my child protesting loudly.
Really That's exactly how I feel about voting being in danger. It's just setting the mood.
I'm looking. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. So, reminder: if folks have questions, definitely leave those in the chat. Whether that's specifically about, things you've been seeing, or you're curious about how things are working, kind of from this national organizing scale, drop things in the chat for sure. I think, there is such an onslaught of information right now, and lots of kind of worries and concerns. across the spectrum, I think it can be a little bit challenging to figure out what to pay attention to. And so I'm curious if there are things that you all feel are the most important things we should be on the lookout for, kind of as this whole thing progresses, in terms of elections, or what are those like key things that you would really like zero in on, you know?
I think this is kind of like two questions, which is one, like what do you need to be aware of for like casting your own ballot?
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, I'm really curious, like what are kind of the signs of like, this is a decision that's being made and it's going to be like good and protecting the public's health and everything, versus this is a decision that's being made in order to like consolidate power, or to I'm sure the Protect Democracy people have a better phrase for that, but sort of like what's a sign of declining democracy as these decisions are being made? Because like it's hard to tell right now. What are hopeful things, and what are things that we should be sort of trying to protect against?
Yeah, because it's a weird time, right? Because I feel like a month ago I would have heard delayed primaries and been very freaked out by that. And now it's like, well, that's the responsible thing to do, right? So it's just it feels like the ground has shifted a lot. And I think a lot of people are kind of unsure how to feel about things.
Yeah, these are really tough questions. Good questions.
Of things here in the Harry Potter Alliance.
Yeah. So let me just start with two quick things on like what you should do about your own right to vote right now, and then we can talk about some picture things. The things that come to mind are, because we are probably going to be moving towards vote by mail, not necessarily exclusively, but like in a large respect, we're going to see a lot more voting by mail. Make sure that your voter registration is in and up to date, because you want to get your ballot, you want to return it. And make sure that you know in your state what the rules are. And you may see those change, because a lot of state legislatures are thinking about new rules that might have to implement. But make sure you know the rules, what the deadlines are, and all of that. So those are just two quick things I think people can do now and sort of stay on top of. Really great question about what this all means for our democracy. It's not the first time we've had challenges around elections. Maybe not, a presidential election quite like this, but during the 1918 Spanish influenza, there were presidential primaries that went forward. There were elections around 9/11 and Hurricane Sandy. So it's not totally unprecedented. And I think, Molly's right that we can get ready for this if we start doing it right away. Primaries are very different than the general election. There's some more room for flexibility there. The general election is going to take place on November 3rd, right? That's what federal law requires, and that's what we need to get ready for. So as far as what state officials are doing right now, both in terms of the remaining primaries and then getting ready, I think part of what we're looking for is decisions that are based in law. So there's a lot of election laws already on the books. Some of those include emergency authorities that legislators or governors or the chief election official, which is often the Secretary of State, that they can invoke in emergencies. So we want to make sure that initially that decisions are grounded in law and that they're grounded in fact, right? So you want to hear, like, if an election is being postponed, you want to know why. You want to hear good reasoning. You want to, public health officials should be weighing in. So you really, I think, just want to look for reasoned decisions. We're often a little cautious about exercising emergency powers, right? Because there are a lot of risks there. This is one situation where probably officials should be exercising their emergency powers, but they should be doing so responsibly and only insofar, I think, as they need to meet the crisis. So those are the kind of things in the standards that we're looking for. We're also looking for basic sort of cross-partisan efforts and bipartisanship, and that you can tell that by sort of, who's talking and what they're saying, and how, like I said, how they're justifying actions. And I hope you'll see a lot more bipartisanship. That's the ideal, at least, as we're going forward and people realize this is actually a real risk for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just add to that, I think the other thing that you want to see along with all of that is that all of these decisions are going to be based in facts. And I think that's going to, again, be something that you'll see more and more of. So I think we're seeing it now, but I think you're going to see more and more of that as this goes on, just because things are going to get worse, unfortunately. And so I think people are going to need to be living in the facts more and more than they even have been. The more that people are basing decisions on facts, they're going to be more transparent, and they're going to be based on real need.
Yeah, and to what, specifically too, because I feel like I'm getting this question a lot from, volunteers who otherwise would be canvassing right now during the primary season. What can we do? What can we do, and how can we chip in? To make sure that these elections run smoothly. And one big part of this, both that two, that's what we look for in states as they're making these decisions, but also that we can all contribute to, is really closing that information gap. So voting by mail for a lot of people is new. A registration deadline, especially for, folks who move around a lot, or, young people, is new. And voting for the first time is new to them. So making sure that people know their rights and know how to vote and know where to go to get the absentee ballot, know the deadline, and actually know everything that they need to participate. So if there's, two things that I would say, for folks here to do tonight, one is, to, whether it's the primary or a later spring election, or if you have an August election in your state or November election, but to check those deadlines, make sure that you yourself are registered, put it as a calendar invite, send it as a Google invite to some of your best friends, your ex-boyfriend. That's really funny, by the way. And make sure that that's on folks' calendars. And same with not just the registration deadlines. If you are in a state that has that doesn't have same-day registration, I'm from Wisconsin, and we do have same-day registration, election day registration. But if you're in a state that does not, making sure that you're on top of that deadline, and then also the vote by mail deadline, what date to request an absentee ballot, because this is, for a lot of voters, we're experiencing this learning curve, together, and it's really a moment for all of us to chip in. Certainly, in our advocacy, we're asking states to contribute to that public information campaign and make sure that voters know what they need to vote in these new circumstances. But it's something, I say that we can't just rely on, lawyers or the government to save our democracy. It's really up to all of us. And that's a way that you can chip in. We're texting folks if you want to, join us and volunteer with this information too.
My brain is going in so many different places right now. The first one I'm going to say is just directly to our chapters and campaign circles and individual folks who are watching right now. We have an earlier Small Things Con workshop that was about mutual aid networks and setting those up where you are, and that. Getting this information about new information about how you vote in your state, or if nothing has changed yet, letting people know, they might not have known what the procedures were in the first place, or they might not know if they changed, but getting that word out through those networks that you are newly a part of or setting up. We've had a number of chapters kind of wondering what do we do now that we can't meet in person, and making kind of a local social media campaign around this is a really important thing that you can do at a distance from each other, and just be sort of generating using those networks that are cropping up more and more, and that you are already a part of, to get the word out. Because the other thing is when we're talking about it can't just be lawyers and the government that save democracy. The people you trust to give you the news and political opinions and everything else. For better, for worse, are the people in your network and your friends and your family, and I think so. Being able to be that teacher for people is so valuable right now. So that's my assignment for all the team members watching right now. The other place my brain was going, there's some questions in the chat, but I'm gonna ask my next question just because it went really well with what we were talking about of making decisions grounded in facts, and then I'll ask the chat questions. But where would you all suggest that people should be getting their news and their information around voting in the pandemic right now? Because like there's a lot of misinformation going around about all of it. So like where would you recommend people to look?
I can start with that one too, but definitely feel free to jump in because this is a hard question because there's so much disinformation, in our world in general, but right now, right? So I think when it comes to the elections, like really one of the best sources should be your state, like chief election officer, so like the Secretary of State or your Board of Elections. They should have the most sort of official and up-to-date information. So that's probably where I would start. There are some other organizations like ours that I think you can also look to that have accurate information. There's also, if you want to be sort of nerdy about it, there's this website called Election Line that really is a go-to place for what's going on in the world of administering elections, including like state-by-state information. So that's a really good place to go. Those are my sort of initial thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with those. And definitely a lot of times, the best place is right to whether it's your, state election administrator, your Secretary of State, or, your local Board of Elections is going to have, the most up-to-date and accurate information. And then, or a trusted org. Obviously, we would pitch ours. I do, any of the orgs that you see on screen. Is where I'd turn to.
Yeah, and I think I would just flag that with all of the upcoming changes that are going to be happening, there's going to be a lot of news coming out from your local polling places, from your local boards of election, from your state boards of election, from your Secretary of State. So just know that there's going to be a lot of news. Know that there's going to be a lot of changes. Be ready for that and be okay with that. They're doing the best they can. They're trying to be transparent. I think we all kind of have to have a little bit of faith in each other and trust them to some extent. And that's hard to do in any world, but especially this one, I think. I think I know that our org, and I know that a lot of other orgs like the ACLU and so many others are going to be pushing for certain measures to make voting, especially in the 2020 general election, as safe as possible and as accessible as possible. And I think that you're going to see a lot of changes because of those. But I think that a lot of them are going to come with time. Some of them have to come through legislation, through state legislatures or through governors. And so until those happen, so some of them will take some time.
Do you think there's going to be a push away from electronic voting machines because we all have to touch the screens and push towards more paper ballots?
I think you just hurt some brains and everyone's face was
because we fill out a paper ballot here, but then we have to feed it into a machine that you then have to press cast, and the cast button is very small and I'm certain full of coronaviruses.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it will be, I know that a lot of, states that we're working with are, working to make sure that their polling locations are adequately equipped with enough, disinfectant, sanitary material, and that, certainly vote by mail is to the extent that everybody can to do it that way. Certainly that's not, shouldn't only exist as vote by mail, that in person is essential, for so many communities. But I think the wish is that every location can still comply with, CDC guidance, can still believe in science, and, continue to make sure that it's hard to have like a zero touch voting system. I think that's the hard thing, is like, whether it's a pen or, a book folks sign into. I'm just thinking at different places what that looks like. That and that's part of the problem right now, too. So, but I can't think of. I'm picturing like a voting vacuum. I just can't. I just don't know how it's how we can do it without some sort of touching, and certainly the need to be incredibly diligent with that.
Right, we agree. Our guidance actually has some of that in the certain suggestions for polling places. Maybe you bring like wipes when you go and vote, right? Bring your own sort of, if you're going to go in person, bring your own hand sanitizer. But we're also recommending things like, maximizing the number of polling places, making sure early voting, happens on as many days and as many hours as possible, because the idea is to just spread everybody out. That will help. And there's some really practical things like, of course, cleaning after every use, but also thinking about, we want, people that run polling places to think about how they're going to space people out in line. Maybe wait outside while you're waiting to vote rather than all cramped in a building. There's lots of things to think about, because in-person voting definitely still needs to be an option. Of course, in some places they have what's called curbside voting, especially for older voters. And so that's an option we think that places should be sort of getting ready for. So there's lots of.
You bring it out to your car.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
So I'm in Wisconsin right now, where I grew up, and I live in Madison, which is near the clerk's office, which I can see out kind of my office window here. And it's early voting now. Yeah, exactly. It's early voting right now, and this clerk's office is incredibly voter friendly and very proactive in the measures they take. And they actually all week have had curbside voting happening. Cool. So I've seen vested with the visibility vest folks coming out, and it's almost like a drive-through where people are like,
it's like a voting Sonic.
So it's pretty incredible to watch, because a lot of times too, folks who assist with early voting are volunteers as well, or civil servants, and which either way incredibly dedicated to be. It's not very warm here right now, and to be doing that, and to go out of their way to think of ways to try to administer this safely with what we're all going through.
Yeah.
I don't want to diminish at all how awesome that is by itself, but now I'm just picturing them in like roller skates, like a true Sonic, like out there, and that's the whole vision in my head.
I will send a suggestion.
Yeah, please do.
If that. I would volunteer for that immediately.
This is the secret.
The problem is my neighborhood is incredibly hilly. Like there is nowhere that's flat where I live. So I'm the
quitter's attitude.
This are becoming frightening in my mind. We have lots of questions. In the chat. This is great. This is inspiring. A lot of ideas. I'm just catching up on some of these. I am going to ask, we'll try to get to everyone's. I'm going to ask a question from Begonia, which is there a situation in which we might see the general election postponed? Oh, so we're just going to start out with the big. Excellent. Perfect. Is there a situation where we might see the general postponed? And is there a situation where, what was that just popped?
Sorry.
Oh, cool. Whoa,
yeah.
Share that stuff.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. And that's not parrot. Oh, that's Lapis from Steven Universe.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Is there a situation where postponing it would be a good idea? For me, that just sounds very scary. So curious if it could be good.
Well, I can start. So the November election is, that date is mandated by law. I think we all agree that all of these decisions with the elections, must be guided by science, must be listening to the health experts, and like you all said before listening to facts, and we have so much time now to know we can get ready for November, and we know what we need to do. We have states who who operate on vote by mail as one of their main methods, that like Colorado, where folks primarily vote by mail, still have that in-person option. But it's not like we're reinventing the wheel on what we need to do here. We can do it, and we can do that in time for November, absolutely, to make sure that folks are both enfranchised and our democracy is protected, and the health of folks in America.
I think that's a great answer. Yeah, federal law requires that all states hold the presidential election on the same day, and it's November 3rd. And then the Constitution says that you get a new president, either an actually new president, but a new term at least in January. And so there's really not room for that. And we do, like Molly said, we have time. There's a lot to do, and there's not a lot of time to waste, but we have time to get ready. And so I think that's what states should really be focusing on right now, is getting ready for November 3rd.
And one thing too, I'll flag, is that, I'm like, if you think back to when, before kind of this, we were all, under quarantine, and like back to the California primary, and we were right, because they had, some vote by mail and early voting, and that you saw results coming out even a week later, and that's okay. I think, and that's what to expect at the presidential election, if we have a much higher percentage of vote by mail than we have in other times. Some states don't start counting those ballots until election day. Some states do. It'd probably be the preference that they could start earlier, but if that doesn't change, I think it's for all of our awareness that slow results don't necessarily mean conspiracy results. That's making sure that votes are counted, that every vote is counted, and that procedures are being followed. And so I think that, given the high probability that there will be much more mail voters in November, that we should all resolve that maybe on November 3rd, is it November 3rd? We're going to have the election, but we might not have the, perfect results, and that's okay. That's part of the system working.
Yeah. And I think with that's something that we should start telling our friends and families now, like start recognizing that that's going to be probably what it's going to be like. And even if all of us here can recognize that it's not an illegitimate election, we need to make sure everyone we know also understands that, because the more people that understand it, the better. And there's going to be people likely on both sides who don't like something about the results and want to fight them in some way. And it's a very easy thing to say, well, they're taking so long. It's screwed up. I don't like it. And don't let that happen.
The part of me is sitting here wondering, I think like everything that's happening with the pandemic and social distancing is forcibly teaching us a new way of life that seems to be a bit slower and mandatorily more forgiving. And I'm curious, the cynic in me says by November, we'll have all forgotten all the lessons we've learned. But part of me wonders if we'll get a little bit better about being patient. Who knows? We'll see. We have more questions from the chat. Janae, since you control the ability to put them on the screen, do you wanna pick it? All right. This one is from friend of the HPA and ACLU, Anna Dardick, and friend of Protect Democracy. How are you getting your COVID-19 guidelines out to the state and local officials? Is it electiontaskforce.org?
That is a great question and a great answer. Yes. So we've been doing that through social media. I think our handle is election task. I think is the task force's handle.
Yep.
And so electiontaskforce.org. But we have a wide range of sort of media contacts of other organizations, mailing lists, newsletters, all of that we are putting out. We're also in contact with organizations like the National Conference of State Legislators and NAS, which is the National Association of Secretaries of State. We are, part of the value of this task force is that we have a lot of people with a lot of expertise, but also a lot of connections. And so all 40 plus of them are pushing it out to their networks. And some of them are former state and local officials and former election administrators. So we're really doing a big push to get it as far out as possible. Obviously, the Harry Potter Alliance. This is like great timing. So yeah, we encourage people to direct traffic to the site. We just launched it. It'll get a bit fancier over time, but the guidance is very easy to find.
Yeah, and if anyone here on this chat wants to help, a great thing that you can do is very simple. Just download the guidance that you see, the COVID-19 guidance that we put on the website. It's 11 pages long. You can read it. It's super helpful. I think my favorite part was where we actually talk about how election administrators can put tape down 6 feet apart to show voters where to stand. It's very specific. But it's very easy to print it out, all 11 pages, and then just mail it to your poll workers, your local poll workers. Like, let them see it. Let them know that this exists.
That's a great Team Granger action or circle action for you all to be doing. So
yeah,
jot that down. We'll work on a resource maybe.
Yeah, we have campaign circles in like 21 states, I think. So like if all
I think maybe 29 now. I don't know. We're growing fast. Mm-hmm.
So if all 29 of you gave that to your local officials, that would be 29 different like municipalities that we've made voting, safer and better for everyone.
Yeah, that's the power we have just in this like campaign community, y'all. Like that is more than half of our nation states.
Yeah. It's complicated, but it's also not that complicated.
It's not that complicated. We can do it together.
Janae, we got a couple more questions.
Yeah, here's a question from Caitlin asking, are there any groups that you all know of that are advocating for automatic voter registration when folks turn 18?
Yeah, I'm advocating for it personally. Great idea. Let's do it, Caitlin.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing everybody on this call, both on screen and not, like generally is an advocate for automatic voter registration. And for folks who don't know, this essentially provides folks the opportunity to register to vote when doing business at their BMV or DMV or whatever it is in their state or other agencies, unless they opt out. And so we actually were working on a ballot measure in Ohio that would include both same-day registration and automatic voter registration, and enshrine that into the Constitution. In 2018, we actually, by we I mean the ACLU, but mostly folks in the state passed a ballot measure through this campaign that brought automatic voter registration to the state and same-day registration, and a lot of states are increasingly passing automatic voter registration. And I think that, all voting rights groups, work on this to an extent and certainly are in favor of anything that makes voting, more accessible. And this certainly keeps voting rolls more up to date as well too, and makes it a seamless process for many people. I don't know if y'all have something to add to.
Sounds good.
Let's do it. I love it. I'm just checking through the chat if there are any other questions. You have one?
I have one other, also from our friend Antarctic.
What's up?
Anna always has a lot of voting questions. We love you, Anna. I think this is a good one, though, in kind of this trend of talking about, what can people be doing locally. So I think maybe kind of the underlying question here, I'll put words into Anna's mouth, but thinking about, locally, can folks be pressuring their kind of local voting systems into changing anything or making these sorts of changes? Or is it something that is generally has to be done on the state level?
You want to go first, Mom?
I feel like I did the last one.
Wait, this is related to
but you guys go ahead.
there was a question further up that's related to this, which was why are polling machines, supplies, and methods determined on the state level and not the federal level? So I feel like these are kind of related. Of basically, at which level can you advocate for these changes in your polling place to make voting more accessible and healthier?
Well, the big question of it's something, a unique feature of our elections, that it's a federal election for federal office, but it is run at a state and local level. That's the way our democracy works. But I think, and Molly probably knows this better than I do, but it's really sort of a little bit different from state to state. Whether decisions are made at a statewide level or, for example, at a county-wide level. So in some states, you see more uniformity in terms of how they approach voting. In others, one county uses one kind of machine, another county uses something else. So it really varies. There's plenty of places to go if you're trying to advocate. But that doesn't mean don't advocate at the federal level. Especially this year, we really need Congress to fund some of the activities, the supplies, the technology, all of the effort that's going to have to go into doing more voting by mail. So there's a place to advocate in Congress, but they don't really run the elections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that, each state does kind of have their own, formula, have their own policies, anywhere from, their early voting to, same-day registration to, the machines and, what happens at the local level. And so while some of these laws are, governed nationally, and then some, state by state, which are different, and then some even, down to the very local level, which is, can be what machines they use. It can be, the availability of early voting in a different municipality or different, county, and the number of those locations. And so that also can vary. And that's, another plug to get involved, because whether it's, advocating for, for the funding at the federal level to make sure that we certainly can have and do have the infrastructure and ability to have a much heavier vote by mail election in November, or whether that's at the local level to make sure that, these decisions are being monitored and are as accessible as possible, and that folks can weigh in on that.
Just add one more thing, that if folks are looking for something to do and to advocate for, that's a great one. Another one is that there are about, I think, 15 or 16 or so states that have absentee voting only by what they call excuse, meaning you have to have a specific reason to request an absentee mail ballot. That should be a relatively easy change. Among all the things that might have to be changed, that's something that can happen on the easier side, at least. So if you're in one of those states and it's easy to find out, I would be calling state legislators and the like and pushing them to make that change.
If anything, coronavirus should be a pretty easy excuse. Not that you have it, but even just saying I have a fear of going out and I'd like to be able to vote by mail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you might be. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. We think, including emergency powers, there may very well be the ability of the chief election officer or the governor to say that it's going to count as an excuse, but each state is a little bit different, and so.
Yeah, because those laws are relics of a different era. Sometimes it's I must be, in Texas, I think it's over 65 out of the county. I mean, it's very, it's from a different era now, especially when it's easy when folks have the ability to administer elections like this. And that's something that totally agree, not just for the upcoming primary, but we should, the states, what's happening now is really revealing some of the deficiencies in election administration in states that existed, and is really putting a spotlight on some of these now in some of their in some of the ways that elections can be more accessible.
And I wanted to just go back to Anna's question about localities setting up drop-off sites for when states, even if their states aren't doing it that way. I think what she means, and I suppose Anna can correct us in the comments if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming what she means is people setting up drop-off sites for absentee ballots, even if the state doesn't have like drop-off sites aside from like polling locations or mailing them in. So that like people can have easier ways to send them places if like they don't have easy access to drop them off or mail them into the polling place, or if like you need someone that isn't you to drop that off. There are certain states that like let you have someone else in your household drop it off for you. I think that's another great thing to advocate for. And I think you're gonna be seeing a lot of change in that. But if you aren't seeing that change, I think that's another great thing to advocate for in your state, because with everything going on, I think there's going to be people that don't have the ability right now to vote in that way. Like they can maybe like fill out the ballot, but they can't deliver it and things like that. So I think that's another thing to advocate for. Anna, correct me if I'm answering the right question.
And for anybody who's watching and sort of feeling like we've named off 500 different things that you can be advocating for, don't worry, because we are going to distill this into actions that we can all take together. So this is sort of the intro to like, here's all the different things we can be doing. And throughout the year, like we are going to be working with these folks and other Granger 2020 partners to like present you with some actions that that you can do, like all these different things. But we're going to make it something where you don't have to pick right now by yourself in your house. We're going to do them together. So, and I'm getting cheers for distilling information. Thank you. We have another question, which is just any ideas on how campaigning might be modified to comply with the pandemic isolation, yet still enabling candidates to express and promote their views and reach wide audiences. I think we're seeing it, right?
I think we're going to find out very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're already starting to see it, right? Locally, at least, we're seeing candidates do online town halls. They have, virtual headquarters, just like the rest of us are in our lives, like doing, video chats for work, not just like this, but for our work every day. I've been getting together with my family using, video chat. So I think we're going to see a lot of online activity, maybe some more television. I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting. The campaigns are really going to have to make some adjustments.
Yeah. I actually just got a text from a campaign as I was sitting here. So I think there's no relying on, I know that, local election, locally electeds in offices, certainly the presidential candidates, some have been doing live streams a lot before, and some are just adapting to kind of, technology and meeting. The idea is always to meet folks where they're at, and right now they're at home. And so how are folks going to continue to do that and leverage that with their messaging and with, it's a lot different than from going to a rally than, watching something at home. And certainly I think for us, we are, volunteer wise, I love canvassing. We're so, it's so effective to talk to voters face to face. And, that's really a huge void right now. And so instead, the texting and the phone banking. And I think too, to your point earlier, I think it's going to be a lot more, at least right now, a lot more of the, talking to friends and families and trusted ones and making sure that, maybe we're having those conversations even more that we otherwise weren't, in years when we were getting information from so many other sources.
I think it's also been interesting, even just in the past 2 weeks, to see how some campaigns have modified not just how, like, their tactics of how they connect with their constituents, but also how they're modifying their messaging a little bit with the pandemic. I think a really great example is Amy McGrath in Kentucky, who's challenging Mitch McConnell. She launched Commonwealth Common Health, which is an entire campaign slogan and campaign work focused on beating the pandemic. I'm a fan of hers personally because she was one of my professors at the Naval Academy, but like I think she's just I think it's a really cool idea, and I've been really impressed with that spin on things, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of that, and I think it's I mean, obviously there's like a political spin to everything, but I think it's been an interesting way to take something that is obviously at the front of everyone's mind and try to not just turn it for like your own political gains, but also like maybe try to turn it for try to focus on other issues going on within the country and within your local state. I've been impressed with that.
There's so much that's changing. It's interesting to ride the wave. It's also interesting to be a part of the wave. Janae, I have some bibble babble I need to say before
Sure.
Spoilers. We are going to wrap up. I think Sarah asked a great question in a minute to sort of like wrap everything up for us. But I just want to say for folks who are watching, this is like I said, day 4 of Small Things Con. We have more things coming this weekend. We have a really like media heavy weekend of like cool book recommendations and watch parties. The Wizards in Space reading is tomorrow night. So like tune in for all of that really fun stuff. Also, oh yeah, there's the schedule. It's right below bit.ly/smallthingscon. And a reminder that we do have a fundraiser running right now. So if you like learned a whole bunch of stuff tonight, which I know I did, so I have to assume the audience did as well. And if you are excited about what we're going to do to distill these actions and help you get plugged in, the best way to help make sure that we can do that is to go to bit.ly/supportgranger2020. You can make a one-time donation there. You can join a fundraising team and like help raise even more money. And if you join the fundraising team, you get to get on a special hangout like this with me, and I will say nonsense to you, and we'll do some Harry Potter trivia. It will be great. We're not going to broadcast that one live, though, so you don't have to worry about it on the internet. Oh, yes, and Anna Dardick is hosting one of the Small Things Con sessions this weekend, sorted, where you're going. It's sorting people into the Hogwarts houses, right? It's different characters.
Yeah, but talking about houses and activism styles.
Houses and activism styles. That's right. I'm sorry. We have 900 pieces of programs.
We have a lot of programs.
That one's great. You should absolutely go to it. Anyway, to the point. We're sort of wrapping things up here, and I want to close out with some actions that people can think about, or advice that we can be thinking about, because right now the world is all about kind of like two things, which is like pandemic, pandemonia, and like Zoom, and also people feeling bored and weird. But Sarah asked a really good question, which is, do you have any advice for getting attention back on the elections and on voting? Because Sarah volunteers with an organization that does this kind of work, and she's had lots of volunteers dropping off, which I'm sure is happening everywhere into organizations and campaigns. So like, how do we keep this on people's mind? I have one thought, which is that we have to give people just a little bit more time to be panicked and freaked out, because we've had our lives turned upside down a little bit. But that's That's not actionable. So, well, I guess it is actionable. I'm going to stop talking and
it's actionable.
Chat now.
I mean, like, this is a scary time. Like, this is really scary. I almost said the F word. But this is, a really scary time.
After dark.
A ton of anxiety, a ton of fear. We're worried about our loved ones. We're worried about, our health infrastructure, our nurses and doctors. Like, we're having faith and putting faith in science and in, our nurses, doctors, folks on the front lines, folks at grocery stores every day working the counter. And it's a time that, none of us have experienced before. And, we received some advice yesterday that was, that you can't give and pour from your cup unless your cup is full. And so I think the big thing is for folks to take the moments you need. Like, this, don't feel like, take care of yourself. Don't feel guilty if you're not, volunteering or unable to find a place to volunteer right now in the same way. And that, what is first here is, everybody's well-being. And I think that in this moment, there's no way that elections won't be on people's mind again. When people are losing their private health care, when people are filing for minimum wage or filing for, unemployment, when people don't have a living wage, that there's no way that all of these issues aren't going to be on folks' mind. And, just how I said before, the ills of, and kind of flaws in our voting system have been revealed. Like, the flaws, in our country have been revealed here too. And I really think that will continue to be on folks' mind. And, when folks feel like their cup is full and they're able to, give and volunteer, there's certainly ways to do that now. We have our People Power program, which is, peoplepower.org, and people, can text from home. We're texting folks about if they have an upcoming election, how to safely vote by mail and what that looks like. But I would say, the first thing is to make sure that, that we can keep the faith in the science and the doctors and the nurses and the folks on the front line, and to keep that cup full so that you can give when you can.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, and I think you're right to give people a little bit of time to experience this and get through it. I mean, we have a principle at Protect Democracy that is sort of team care and kindness, where we think we also work-life balance and sort of keeping all things in perspective and thinking about the long haul. We have a lot to get through as a country, and I think those principles can apply to us not just in our organization but to the country as a whole. I think Molly's right. Elections are not going to go away. They're going to be in the news again before long, and there are going to be lots of opportunities: texting programs, phone banking. When the election come back, the delayed primaries, or when the general election gets closer, there will be more volunteer opportunities. We're going to need poll workers among lower risk populations, for example. So there are going to be lots of opportunities. So I think we should give ourselves a little bit of a break and sort of forgive each other a little bit. And then when folks are ready to focus, there's going to be plenty to do.
And practice those roller skating skills for when you're.
Sarah also just had a nice follow-up, which is just that she's also referring to herself with this question. She's not been able to focus like she used to. So this is very validating. So thank you all.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us are feeling stressed right now, and I think that's totally normal. I know at our org, we do this really wonderful thing where we have everyone on the team, with no judgment whatsoever, put down how much, what percentage of time they're estimating they might be able to work in the following week, in just a joint Google document. And it's really comforting, I think, for the team to know that it's okay if you have to say, I have to take time off and I'm going to be working 50% or 60% because the kids are home, or because I need to take care of my parents, or I'm stressed and I just can't do this right now. People are having hard times, and I think it's okay. I think it's okay to recognize that.
It would be very, very strange if you were not behaving in a way that is very different from how you normally behave. Like,
Yeah.
everybody has different reactions to that stuff, but like, you know, this is something that like we have never been through. Like all the people alive on Earth right now have not been through. I guess some people might have been babies during the Spanish flu, but yeah, they weren't also going on Zoom meetings. Like, a lot has changed. But yeah, I think this is really good advice. Like, be kind to yourself and, be ready for when there are going to be a lot of opportunities. Because as mentioned, we're going to distill them and send them through. But yeah, there are a lot of, we've had a lot of really good ideas tonight. I think there's been a lot of really interesting discussion on screen, in the chat. We're going to continue it throughout 2020. Believe it or not, we're still kind of in the beginning of 2020. I know. We've been here for a full decade already. But these last 4 days have been fun, doing Small Things Count with you. Yeah. I've had a lot of fun talking to our friends tonight from Protect Democracy, ACLU. Do you all have any just last reminders to, go to electiontaskforce.org or sign up for different programs or anything? I'm so used to like people who are plugging their podcast or something.
Normally we have like creators on here who are like, find me on my podcast, my book comes out here. So like, just having other like organizer professionals is how you all want to sign off. What do you want to plug? Y'all got any creative projects? Now's your time.
You guys gotten really into TikTok? No.
Yeah, what's your podcast side hustle? Let us have it.
We're officially getting punchy.
Yeah, it's that time. Well, seriously though, any links that you do to plug for your own organizations besides what we will distill for folks?
I'll include them in the distilled, and I just thanks
awesome.
Everybody for having me tonight, and it was nice to be able to have more interaction.
Yeah.
Same here. Glad there's so many people interested in this. This is why we're going to be okay, I think, because we've got so many people thinking about this. So thank you all. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all again so much for lending your expertise. Super, super useful and helpful. And yeah, like we keep saying, we will send out lots of information. And take this moment to use our community power for good, which is just what we're good at,
And be kind
all
to
right.
each other.
Yeah, be kind out there, folks. Thank you all so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody.